Hello, my amazing friend. The Indians who lived on the plains had to be both confused and frustrated by what was going on in the 1800s. Settlers, miners, and railroads kept demanding the land the Indians were using to pursue their nomadic lifestyle. The railroad companies hired men to eliminate the buffalo, and suddenly the Plains Indians struggled to feed their families by their old techniques of gathering food and hunting buffalo. As they always did, the Indians fought back, but unlike their neighboring tribes, the U.S. Army proved to be a force to reckon with. Eventually, the Indians wanted peace and signed treaties agreeing to go on land. Then the government would demand that land back. Warring tribes like the Cheyenne continued to fight and won some battles, but they paid dearly for it. Eventually, they were forced to live on a reservation in Indian Territory, an area with a dry climate where it was hard to grow food. The Cheyenne once lived by the Great Lakes, and they once knew how to farm, but they were relocated to western Oklahoma where there was little rain, and they had never been trained in dry farming techniques. Their dislike and distrust of the white man was intense and well-deserved, and they had little use for the white man's religion. A big part of that was due to Colonel John M. Chivington, who was once a Methodist minister. Chivington was responsible for the Sand Creek Massacre, in which the elderly, women, and small children were murdered. These people had come to the area seeking peace and asking for protection. Chivington never got the message. He and his volunteer troops went in with the intent to slaughter every single Indian. Such atrocities as these were challenges the Mennonite missionaries faced, but they faced it bravely, choosing to work with the most warlike of the tribes, the Cheyenne and the Arapaho. Samuel Haury and his wife Susanna arrived at the Darlington Agency in Indian Territory in 1880. They hoped to share the gospel and civilize the Indians by teaching them how to behave like white men. Other denominations such as the Quakers, the Episcopalians, the Baptists, the Methodists, and even the Mormons also came into Indian Territory, but the Mennonites took up the lion's share of the work. While the Haurys and others arrived with good intentions, their work would prove harmful in the long run. The Haurys quickly realized that the older Indians weren't interested in their faith, so they turned to the children. They hoped to influence the later generations in pursuing the white men's ways. Offering free education can be a noble endeavor, but the Haurys went about it in the wrong way. They built a mission, and the Indian agent forced the parents to send their children to the school. Then the U.S. Army abandoned their temporary fort that they called Cantonment on the Canadian River. They offered it to the Mennonite missionaries, and the Haurys moved there to establish a new school. By the way, Cantonment on the Canadian River later became known as Canton, Oklahoma. Russian immigrant and missionary H.R. Voth took over the Darlington School. He was determined to destroy the Indians' language and culture. Believe it or not, he was convinced that what he was doing was the right thing to do, and he genuinely cared for the Indians. And the missionaries' hands were often tied. In order to stay, they had to please the Indian agent. Sometimes this caused a moral conflict. One time in the 1890s, an Indian agent issued orders that he hoped would destroy the Indians' customs and celebrations. Missionary Rudolph Peter wrote a letter speaking out against this. The Indian agent wrote back, "I shall know where to place you in the future." The Mennonites eventually established 11 missions and sent 100 missionaries to Indian Territory, but their efforts produced few results. It took 8 years before the Mennonites saw even one convert. After 20 years of hard work, only 40 people came to Christ. Yet while their efforts to share the gospel weren't effective, they did great work in preserving the Indians' language and culture. Rudolph Peter developed the Cheyenne language in written form and even wrote a Cheyenne English dictionary. H.R. Voth studied the Arapaho language and wrote scholarly articles about the Arapaho and the Hopis. Sadly, he sold valuable Indian artifacts to a museum in Chicago. So while the Indians respected the Mennonites for their hard work and their attempts to help the Indians, they had no intention of becoming like them. Today, missionaries recognize the importance of respecting and embracing local culture so long as it doesn't compromise the gospel. Sharing the gospel means showing love to a people, not destroying what they are. And it doesn't mean taming them. Thank you for watching Elkie Lore. It was great seeing you, my friend. Click the like button, subscribe if you haven't, hit the notification bell so you won't miss a single episode. and I'll see you in the next one.
Was never tamed.